Good evening, I'm Ryan Bonazzo. Thank you for joining us. The Thunder Bay District Health Unit is reporting another double-digit case count over the weekend. At least 2 of those cases are associated with a local elementary school, according to Lakehead Public Schools. The board says 2 people associated with École Grand Morgan have tested positive for the virus, adding that the parents of any students, as well as teachers or staff who are impacted, will be contacted by a public health professional. Those who are not contacts aren't considered to be at elevated risk of contracting COVID-19. Well, here's the full breakdown of new positive cases. There are 14 in total, 7 in the Thunder Bay and surrounding area, and 7 in First Nation communities. 6 of the cases are close contact infections. The exposure source for the other 8 cases are unknown. 2 more people have also been hospitalized with the virus, bringing the current number of COVID hospitalizations in the Thunder Bay District to 3. There are now 25 active cases in the TBDHU, the most since June 18th. Over in the Northwestern Health Unit, there's 1 new infection in the Dryden Red Lake area. The NWHU now has 5 active cases across its catchment area. After a 20-month closure, the United States reopened its land border to fully vaccinated Canadian travelers today. But officials at Ryden's border store say they only saw a minor uptick in customers this morning as the need for expensive PCR tests upon returning to Canada seems to be keeping many people from heading down to Minnesota. Alex Flood has the details.
The U.S. border crossing at Pigeon River was only about 10% busier than the pandemic normal, as slightly more Canadians, mainly snowbirds heading south for the winter, took advantage of the long-awaited reopening. The first stop in Minnesota is Ryden's border store, where some came to pick up long-awaited packages in person. Store manager Jamie Spry was pleased with the customer turnout early in the morning, saying it was nice to see some familiar faces as the store's day-to-day procedures slowly return to normal.
We did get a few people that were actually coming in that were picking up packages, making a trip of it, going for a day or 2 to Grand Marais or Duluth, and then getting their packages and heading back. So that's nice. We hadn't seen that in a year and a half, other than businesses being able to come down. So it was different. It was busy for a while. It's kind of slowed down now. I think a lot of people got moving pretty early in the morning.
Travelers returning to Canada are still required to take a costly PCR test, a measure which Spry feels will continue to hamper foot traffic through his store. He does, however, remain hopeful the Canadian government will soon lift the testing requirement, which will allow travelers to make shorter trips, like picking up a package, much easier and cheaper.
We're going to see some people that are going to make a trip of it, and they're going to go down for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days, which is far better than what we were seeing before. But yeah, it does restrict a little bit of the travel, I'm sure. But hopefully that will all be ended in the next, recent time. And we'll be able to see people just coming down for a day to pick up their packages or go to the gas station or duty free or whatever. So.
As the holiday season approaches, Spry expects to see a steady rise in customer numbers as Canadians will be ordering gifts for pickup over the next several weeks. Alex Flood, TBT News.
And we'll have more on the border reopening later on in the news hour. Well, millions of people across Ontario are now able to roll up their sleeves for a 3rd shot of the COVID-19 vaccine. Expanded booster eligibility came into effect over the weekend. Janice Golding has details from a vaccination clinic in Toronto.
A steady stream of people made their way into the Scarborough Health Network's COVID-19 vaccine clinic at Centennial College today.
It went smooth. Everything was smooth. They were very organized in there.
Several groups of higher-risk Ontarians now eligible to book booster shots.
I feel great. I didn't expect it this early, and I'm really, really happy to get it.
I want to protect myself and the others, too.
I mean, I'm an older gentleman, and I want to add a few more years to my life and not risk anything.
You feel safer. You feel more protected. Each and every day you come into work, you're exposed, and we expose other people, too.
250,000 people were already eligible for 3rd shots, meaning people who are immunocompromised or who live in long-term care and retirement homes. But over the weekend, an additional 2.75 million people became eligible for boosters.
Currently, we are welcoming people who are over the age of 70 and healthcare workers who've had their vaccines over 6 months ago.
Also included, essential caregivers in congregate settings, people who received 2 doses of AstraZeneca or 1 dose of Janssen, and First Nations, Inuit, and Métis adults and anyone in their households. Important to note that while those who are eligible for their 3rd shots must book their appointments online, anyone who needs a 1st or 2nd dose is still able to walk in for a shot. And now you're going to do it.
Well, next semester we have to have our vaccines in order to be on campus, and there's no online classes. So,
while healthcare officials say 2 doses still protect the general public quite well after 6 months, especially against serious illness and death, vulnerable populations are at increased risk of waning immunity.
Just because the antibody titers can start going down, so we just want to make sure that everyone still continues to be protected.
The province is eventually planning to offer booster doses to everyone starting early next year. Janice Golding, CTV News.
The town of Manitowaj has been left to rely on neighboring Marathon for fire protection today after all 21 members of the volunteer fire department took a leave of absence. Deputy Fire Chief Denis Narbonne blames it on a lack of communication between the CAO, Town Council, and the fire department while they try to hire a new fire chief. The fire chief for Marathon currently has a dual role as the acting chief for Manitowaj. Town officials held a meeting today to discuss the volunteer firefighters' concerns. Residents are being told to be cautious around cooking and heating appliances until the dispute is rectified. The Southbridge Roseview long-term care home is experiencing a facility-wide gastrointestinal outbreak. The district health unit says about 20 residents have been affected, but according to the manager of the infectious disease program, Diana Gowanlock, patient symptoms associated with the outbreak aren't anything to be overly concerned about at this time.
So this specific outbreak, with it being a gastrointestinal outbreak, we are finding right now that the symptoms are fairly mild so far, which is great and not unusual. And they do seem to be short-lived. So most people are recovering within a couple of days.
The facility has canceled admissions, transfers, discharges, and social activities until further notice. Visits are now restricted to family members and caregivers only. OPP in Kenora responded to a fatal head-on crash yesterday evening. It happened around 7:30 when a pickup truck collided with a car on Highway 17 near Longbow Lake. One person in the car was killed and another was airlifted to hospital in Winnipeg. 3 other people were treated and released from the hospital in Kenora. The highway was shut down for about 10 hours and the OPP continued to investigate. Meanwhile, OPP in Nipigon have arrested a man and a woman following a bizarre series of events. Around 8:30 this morning, the suspects were involved in a single vehicle accident on the highway just east of Nipigon. Another driver pulled over to help the couple, but instead he was assaulted and the pair attempted to steal his vehicle. Police say the driver managed to fend them off and drive away. The OPP issued a public alert asking travelers to report any hitchhikers they see, and the suspects were arrested a short time later. Tonight's Thunder Bay City Council agenda is relatively light with just a few topics up for discussion, and it shrunk even further today after Aldo Roberto has decided not to ask that the city's work-from-home pilot for city employees be canceled. Here's an item that is still on the agenda. Mayor Bill Morrow is looking to extend safety netting at all of the city-run arenas. The proactive measure would cost a maximum of just over $136,000, according to a report from last year. $84,000 of that would go toward retractable netting at the Fort William Gardens. If approved as is, administration will be asked to report back before January with installation details and funding sources. The Thunder Bay Port Authority continues to see a decrease in grain shipments from the prairies compared with the boom year of 2020. The shipments for October were 17% lower than the same month last year, from 936,000 metric tons down to 775,000. Port spokesperson Chris Heikkinen says the reduction is due to western grain harvests that were greatly impacted by drought conditions this year.
So all 3 operating western grain ports are experiencing similar decreases in grain shipments. Largely the problems on the prairies during the growing season, they had significant drought and heat that led to greatly reduced harvest this fall.
The year-to-date decrease in grain loaded in Thunder Bay is 29%. Compare that with decreases of 28% in Vancouver and 64% in Prince Rupert. But there's good news to report as well, as potash shipments were way up last month, and Kiefer Terminal is experiencing a 25-year high in general cargo shipments. That's an exciting development, as each shipment provides a substantial economic boost.
That we get through Kiefer Terminal specifically has a significant economic impact on the local economy, upwards of $150,000 per shipment. So you're seeing, as we get greater traction in the number of shipments coming through, that leads to more cargo and more jobs down at the waterfront.
With Remembrance Day coming up this Thursday, the district's medical officer of health says she supports public events that are set to take place as long as they're done in a safe way. 3 local events are scheduled to go ahead, including the ceremonies at the Waverley Park Cenotaph and up on Mount McKay. But for the second year in a row, the traditional Remembrance Day service at Fort William Gardens will be instead held outside City Hall. Dr. Janet DeMille believes it's important to acknowledge the day and has some recommendations on how to do so while also being cautious with public health.
The idea, if ceremonies or events are held outdoors, because we know that the risk of transmission of COVID-19 is much less outdoors. And then, asking people, if you do have any symptoms, don't be around other people, go get tested, so stay home. And then wear masks, especially if people can't remain sort of 2 meters from one another.
DeMille also, of course, encourages residents to get vaccinated if they haven't done so already. Well, Remembrance Day isn't until Thursday, but today is Indigenous Veterans Day, and Lakehead University marked the occasion with a ceremony and historical exhibit. A large display of artifacts and stories from the First and Second World Wars and other more recent conflicts was set up in the LU Agora. The exhibit was created with the help of the Thunder Bay Museum. Several Indigenous veterans shared stories of the shocking realities they've faced, while other speakers spoke about the importance of recognizing their efforts. Former military chaplain Kerry McLaughlin followed in his dad's footsteps, serving the country. He believes Indigenous veterans still haven't gotten the credit they deserve.
I think the words "lest we never forget," that all Canadians serve, but that the Indigenous veterans, whether it be First Nation, Métis or Inuit, unfortunately were forgotten about and were penalized because of their Indigenous ancestry.
November 8th, National Indigenous Veterans Day is, has been observed since 1994, is still not as widely observed as the ceremonies on November 11th. So we thought this would be a really great opportunity to highlight the sacrifices of Indigenous veterans, their families and their communities that have been made for over 100 years.
The exhibit runs until Friday. Baxter encourages the public to come and learn more. Anyone entering the university must be vaccinated and complete screening prior to coming inside. Well, these warm fall temperatures have provided a final chance for local golfers to hit the links. A handful of courses across the city are still open and hoping to stretch out the season as long as possible. Mitchell Ringos hit the greens yesterday. He has more.
Usually November reminds people that snow is on the way, but this year some golf courses are throwing that thought to the side, staying open and letting golfers get on the green well into November. The city courses are currently closed, but some golf courses like Dragon Hills and Emerald Greens are still open. With these courses running into November, they have seen a huge increase in golfers coming to book. Emerald Greens employee Mary Wenzel says opening early and closing late has been a great decision for the course.
With it being so nice out, I think we've for sure had some more people come out with the great weather, and with all the other courses closing, we wanted to be one of the last few just to let those last couple people get out here before the season's done.
And for Dragon Hills owner Michael Komar, staying open is great news to have people coming out and enjoying life on the course, especially with how crazy life has been over the past 2 years for Dragon Hills. Komar says booking times have been fully packed for days, and they're constantly getting more requests for tee times.
We get a lot of people from the city courses and stuff and checking out the course, and we've been lucky. The course is in fantastic shape this year and even last year, but this year has been probably the best we've had in 15 years.
With it being such a beautiful day, we asked local golfers what it meant to still be on the golf course in November.
Being able to play in November the 7th in weather that doesn't require you to wear about 16 layers, really fantastic.
Oh, last time I golfed in November was in Ireland 3 years ago, but we drove all the way up from Nippigan for this today.
Well, you know what? You try and take as much advantage of it as you can. And last year we golfed on November 6th, so this year we're on the 7th, so we broke last year's records.
You can't complain. The weather, I mean, it could be snowing next week, so we're taking full advantage of it. Yeah.
We're excited to be out. Unfortunately, we have a pretty short season here, so try and squeak out every last drop.
If you're looking to golf later into November, you might be in luck, as Emerald Greens is planning to stay open until Tuesday, depending on the weather. While here at Dragon Hills, they have plans to stay open until Thursday and potentially go into next week, but that all depends on how the weather holds up. Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.
I don't know whether Mitchell is working or playing on that golf course. Well, if you've missed any of today's local news items, or if you'd like to see them again, they'll be posted to tbnewswatch.com a little later this evening. You can find them on the homepage or in our dedicated TBT News section under the News tab at the top of the site. If you want to see all of the recent stories from your favorite TBT News reporter, that option is available to you as well on our dedicated reporter pages. And of course, you're also encouraged to tune in to the TBT News late edition at 11 o'clock tonight on Global Thunder Bay and 11:30 on CKPR Thunder Bay. Well, Fiona, what a glorious